So good day. Good day to everyone. Good day to you. I mean, whoever is looking, I mean, at this presentation to really get, I mean, a feel of what our entrepreneurship is all about. So, I mean, at Vaka Health Foundation, we feel entrepreneurship is everything that we do in our lives. And we feel entrepreneurship is empowering. We feel entrepreneurship is about identifying problems and coming up with sustainable solutions to solving those problems. So one of our co-founders and our executive chairman, Peter Williams, Professor Peter Williams, is a really, I mean, a serial entrepreneur himself, and he's quite keen, I mean, to share his experiences and what he has learned over the years. So this presentation is all about his story and also about some of the useful ways in which we can be able to pitch our stories, I mean, as entrepreneurs. So I would like to ask Peter to come in in this session. We will cover the business canvas model as well as the value proposition. So it's an interactive session which is going to be like intersected with some discussions. So sit back and watch this presentation, and you can be able to get on with your own business canvas model as well as, I mean, value proposition. If there's something that you are working on, I would encourage you to have some, I mean, notes besides you, and you can even pause this presentation and try some of, I mean, the things that we'll be discussing that Peter will be sharing insights on. So Peter, I welcome you to start your presentation. If you can just adjust your camera so that we can be able to see you clearly. Thank you so much, and you can go ahead.
Okay, thanks very much. So I'll just say a quick few words about myself. So I started off as a geophysicist, a geoscientist. I had degrees in geophysics, geology, and geochemistry. I nearly got a degree in mining engineering, but that was a little bit too much for everyone. I also got a master's degree, and I did a thesis in artificial intelligence, and that was back in 1990s. And that was at the Colorado School of Mines. So that's the education. It's Australia and US based, at least at the university level. I started off as an entrepreneur, so actually sitting inside a very large company and being constantly aware of the need to improve everything we did. And I went about trying to do that. So I was really classified more as an entrepreneur. I rose up to be their chief geophysicist and then also their first general manager of geoscience innovation globally. After doing that for a few years, I went into being looking at just how you create companies. So in other words, went away from actually creating new ideas per se, just within a company. I started to think about how to build companies around and startup companies around new ideas. So I started that in earnest in around about 2000, and I was lucky enough or unlucky enough that the first company that we started, or that I was a co-founder of, became $1 billion company after about 3 years. And I say unlucky because it's a hard thing to beat that. You know, most of the time you don't get there, and if you believe some of the statistics, 90% of the people fail in the first couple of years, fail totally. So to actually just go into starting a company up that actually became $1 billion company in 3 years was really something quite extraordinary. So one, it was our first attempt, and two, it was so quick to bring about. And people are still studying that at university and master's degrees and so forth to try and understand what happened. From there, I basically went out of that company when it got to be $1 billion company. That was my exit point, and I went into starting companies in Africa. And I took on probably the most difficult sort of job really was to start a company in a country called Burkina Faso, which most people in Australia had never heard of, didn't know existed, and to go and try and raise what we initially started to raise at was a raise of $6 million to go and look for gold in a country that no one had heard of was extraordinarily difficult. I'll come back to that a little bit later on, but needless to say, we were actually very, very successful, not only with that company, but several companies that we started over a period of about 10 years in West Africa. I have also been involved in starting not just companies that go out and try and find gold and nickel and copper and so forth, which is kind of the base degree of my career, but I've been very interested and have started companies that are internet-based companies, physics-based companies, chemistry-based companies, and also more recently finance and now health. So I've done quite a lot in a lot of different sort of industry sectors. I've started companies in 4 continents in about a little bit more than 10 countries. It's always been a lot of fun, and I really, really enjoy it. And I wonder why it took so long for me to become an entrepreneur rather than an intrapreneur rather than a salaried worker. But anyhow, I'll figure that out sooner or later. So I'll be talking about mostly about entrepreneurship and a very specific aspect of that, and that is getting your idea out and getting it scrubbed up into a form where A, you understand it yourself, and B, other people can understand what your idea is and how that maps into a business quite quickly and efficiently and effectively. So that's the business model canvas, and that's what I'll be talking about mostly. And at the heart of the business model canvas is the concept of value and creating value. If you're not creating value, you basically haven't got a business. So it's very, very fundamental, and that's the initial sort of part of the talk, is really that value creation concept. Then we map that into a business model canvas, and then we'd wrap up with a question and answer section right at the end. So, and the good news about the question and answer session, I mean, it's live, like Admiral was saying, so you can ask questions at any time. And the question and answer section at the back, the good thing about it is that there is a final section on question and answer. The bad thing for you is if you don't ask questions, I certainly will. So I'll just proceed from there, and we'll map ourselves out. Entrepreneurs, it's been around for a long, long time. If you Google it, you'll probably come up with the date of 17,000 BC. So about 19,000 years ago. I figure it was a lot earlier than that. They talk about the first entrepreneurs being emerging in New Guinea. I'd also challenge that. I think there was a lot earlier entrepreneurism shown, and I suspect that was in Africa, and what they were trading and how they were behaving as entrepreneurs, I think was really quite fundamental to human nature. So entrepreneurism is something that I discovered that actually was within me. I didn't go and do courses about it. I didn't go to a university to do courses. I think that's not kind of where you learn about entrepreneurism. You learn about entrepreneurism by doing. So that's my lead in. On entrepreneurs in Africa, it's I do know quite a few entrepreneurs in Africa, and some of them are extremely successful. So Africa as a continent, you've got 1.2 billion people in the continent. 60% of those people are under the age of 30, and this makes a huge market with huge business opportunities. And I'd like to think that all those, most of those business opportunities are really for African persons, as well as discerning investors. But it's the African entrepreneur. That's what I'm particularly interested in, actually trying to contribute, kind of build up not only the individual but the ecosystem, not just in one country, but right across all of the countries here in Africa. So we believe in VACA that Africa's young, and even the not so young entrepreneurs, not the public sector, not the large corporations that come from overseas, but the young and not so young entrepreneurs will build the future of Africa, one job at a time, and they will create that the Africa that they want for themselves and their communities. So that's a pretty basic statement of belief. We further believe that the best place to start and the most urgent place to start is in the health sector. And we think further, if you look into that health sector, the digital health is going to play a very significant role. And we want a lot of the people there in Africa to play significant roles and have significant benefits, not just improved health outcomes, but improved careers, improved outcomes for their broader community. And so we're very, very much focused on that, and that's really a deliverable out of what we do. So we're going to continue to train. We started training in entrepreneurship around about March this year. Continue to mentor, so we're mentoring several people, several companies in several countries at the moment, and that's going to expand. We're providing early stage funding for these ideas, and providing the networks and the opportunity to access key networks, and in particular, not just technical networks, but also financial networks. I've never personally for one day doubted the creativity, the ingenuity, the capacity to transform Africa. I really never have, and I've been there really now for around about 25 years, and it's been a constant source of amazement about some of the different ideas and the really innovative ideas that come out. There's some issues in actually progressing these ideas. They're not so dissimilar to problems that I had when I had a lot of ideas when I was very young. I didn't know how to transform those ideas into businesses, business opportunities, and into companies. So I'm quite willing. I've been down that road. I'm quite willing to walk down that road with a lot of the people in Africa to ensure that they get the right sort of outcome that they want in terms of following their ideas into businesses, and businesses that benefit the broader community in Africa. Jack Ma, the Chinese entrepreneur who's operating and started Alibaba back in the late 1990s, he said that Africa should have its own Alibaba, owned by the African youth. There's no reason why this should not be so. There is just absolutely huge potential here, and we at VACA just wholeheartedly agree with that. So when you're starting a business, basically you start with an idea. Lots of different ways you generate ideas, and I've spoke about that in different courses, and I can speak about it again, but not in this course. We take that idea and transform that into a business idea. So we're trying to wrap some kind of sense of revenue that we can make. We want to monetize that idea. That's the sort of language that we use. So we transform that idea, translate that idea into a business idea, and to then scope that business idea out into what they call a business canvas model, and I'll show you that. It's a very simple model to follow, and that's some of its beauty. And then if it passes the sniff test, then we develop what we call a minimum viable product, or a proof of concept, to see what the customers think about the idea, to see kind of what they would like to pay for that idea, for that product, for that service. And so that's the minimum viable product, which comes out of the business canvas model, which comes out of the business idea. We test that minimum viable product on a portion of the customer segment. Like I was saying, we don't try and go right out to the full customer. It's a product. It's quite limited in its production, and it's quite limited in its reach in terms of the customer segments. And so just how you reach into which customer segment that you've got mapped out in your business canvas model, that's something to consider quite carefully. A lot of failure can actually happen when that's not done successfully. And then if we develop fully that business model canvas, we move that into a business plan. And a business plan is really a lot more detailed version of the business model canvas, and it's a lot more all-encompassing. It has a number of additional facets that are considered in the business that are not considered in the business model canvas. So that's kind of the progression, going from an idea to a business plan, then out into a business, and hopefully a successful business. The advantages of a business model canvas is that it gets the people using it to focus on really kind of what the essence of the business is. and it gets the focus in a quite a systematic way. And that systematic focus is really key to not only testing the idea and developing the idea into a business model, but it's also quite key to being able to explain it to other people who you might want to attract into the business, and other investors who you might want to attract money into your business, or money and their time into your business. So the business model canvas is very good for focusing. It employs a systematic way of thinking about a business and constructing a business and testing a business. Because it's so simple, it can be done quite quickly. It could be done in days, and sometimes in a day. So it's very quick, and it's also very agile because you can change it. You can edit it very quickly. If you get a business plan that might have 30 or 40 pages or 60 pages of text and diagrams, and you want to try and adjust that quite quickly, it's very difficult to do. So this is where the business model canvas comes in. It creates a common language for the business, some common reference points and reference concepts. And like I say, it just facilitates very clear communication to stakeholders, all future stakeholders, in what you're thinking about. What is your idea? How are you going to make money out of your idea? So it's creating that very common language. And that is just immensely empowering. Some of the things that are really quite important in developing the idea into a business idea and into a business model canvas, it involves two things that one's talked about a lot, which is passion. And basically, if you don't have passion, I would say the probability of failure goes up quite a lot. You've got to be very, very passionate about that idea. It's got to be something that is really quite meaningful to you, that is something that you feel extremely strongly about, and you're going to be able to weather the storms that do come up when you try and take that idea into being a robust company, because the history of the startups is of great uncertainty. Quite a few have a lot of setbacks. Being resilient is something that you just actually have to have, and it's a lot easier to be resilient if you're very passionate about something, and that's my experience. So if I'm investing in small startups, that's one of the things I look at. If people are not passionate about it and they're not walking their passion and talking their passion, and it's not very clear, I'm almost out of there, and it might be 30 seconds or 60 seconds and I'm gone. So passion is something that I believe I've got to have in a startup. I've got to have myself about my ideas. Otherwise, there's no point in me actually going any much further. I know that if I get past hurdle one, I'll probably get flattened by hurdle 2 or 3, because I just don't have the passion to pick myself up, dust myself off, restructure my thoughts, and keep pushing ahead. So passion is really quite central for anything that I do and anything that I invest in, any company that I invest in. Is there a question?
So, yeah, Peter, if I can interject and ask, in the introduction, can you hear me, Peter?
Yes.
Yeah, in the introduction, you said, you have been involved in forming several companies. So, just to share my experience and also to, hear from you, like when you form a company, and there's passion, I want to know what would happen. When you were going on to the next project and the third project, what would happen about your passion on this? Or for the first project, did you remain, all consumed, or once the first project is now going on and things are taking care of themselves, you have less passion, and then you are moving on to this other project. So I just want to know how you work that out. But before you speak, to say that, I agree that passion is really an important element, because all the times that I've been involved in project that I'm passionate about, I don't really see the challenges as hurdles, but I view them as challenges, and I find solutions of going around because I'm doing something that I love. But I just want to know how it works when you are now going to 10 companies. How do you spread the passion, over the 10 companies?
Okay. Yep. Yeah. So the way I kind of look at it, I've got to ask myself, what am I really, really passionate about? And it's that if I really strip it back, it's actually the creation of a company that I'm really that is a very fundamental part of my passion. I love the innovation. I love the creation. And that's what happens in that first 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5 years. So that is one of my passions. And then the second barrel of the gun, if you like, is the particular idea that I'm trying to take through the creative and company creative sort of steps. So there's two things that I'm really passionate about. One is the creation, and the other is the creation of a particular idea. So when I get through, and sometimes it's 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, I basically I still have that same passion, but the creation that I've got in my mind is really like a creation of jobs. It's a creation of dignified employment for people. And so I'm looking to replace myself in that company quite as quickly as I can, but also I'm not going to move on until I find someone who's going to be able to do that job as good as, if not better than myself. And so once I've done that, I know the idea, that passion for that particular idea is actually going to be in good hands. And so when that actually happens, then I can say, right, there's another passion, that very creative passion that I've got, creating something from nothing. I'm back into that, and by that time, 3 years down the track, I've probably got another 4, 5, 10 different ideas that I want to bring into fruition, make a company out of. So I just move on to the next company. I mean, it is quite maybe quite unusual for people to go from one idea to another as quickly as and as much as what I have with something like 40 companies in 20 years. So that's roughly about yeah, it's a lot. I don't want to kind of think about that too much, but I really don't, because I just keep it's a continual sort of process of being creative, being innovative, and doing what I'm actually I think I'm quite good at. If you ask me to go and try and go back to my corporate life, where I'm sitting in a a multi-billion-dollar sort of company, going to lots of different meetings and stuff like that, it just wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. I just don't have the interest. I don't see the challenges there. I don't see the fit with my particular personality and my passions.
Okay. No, thanks so much. I think, I mean, I identify with the creation part, and that, I mean, it drives you because you really realize you are working on something which can help, I mean, other people. And I mean, because you see the bigger picture, like where something is going to. You are really fueled and passionate because, I mean, you see the bigger picture, and you see how transforming it can be to the people around you as you go along with them. So yeah, I think it's really a useful, I mean, insight that you have just shared. Thanks.
No problem. Are there any other questions?
Yes.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I'm still in my pajamas, so I will take the video off. Okay. Interesting conversation, Peter and Edmo. What you're saying, Peter, I see FarmScope going the same route. Just that we're going to be focusing in agribusiness, not all other. You're a serial entrepreneur. We're going to have a lot of products under one company. So I kind of resonate. I just wanted to find out that when you move out of your companies that you would have created, how do you manage to maintain control? Or do you move out? Do you leave completely, or you're still part of the companies that you would have started up?
Yeah. Yep, that's a pretty good question. So there's one word you use there that is quite interesting word. That's control. I actually don't look to control these companies forever. I don't think it's very healthy. I don't think I've got the skill set necessarily or the interest to control the companies as they grow. You see a lot of companies actually fall over that are actually excellent companies to start with, but the founders of those companies stay beyond their competency range, and they actually then, their presence inhibits and their control inhibits the growth of the company. So I don't think my control as the company grows is actually a particularly good thing. My persona is such that I don't feel that need to control the company. I think that anyone and everyone can be replaced, including myself. Some of the companies I really do love to stick around because they really resonate with me, and I think I can make contribution to them. And if I can, then I will stay around. But if I really feel that, say, the company's in good hands, so I've been correct in replacing myself, we've been correct in, assembling a really good team of people that can take that company forward, I'm more than happy to just say, well, here's the keys to the car, drive the car, go for it.
Oh, nice. So yeah, it comes down to letting go of micromanaging the companies and trusting other people to run it better, isn't it? And developing teams that can take the vehicle further, better than I can as the founder, isn't it?
Yeah. People have different strengths and weaknesses. And part of being an entrepreneur is actually to recognize what your own strength and your weakness is. If I had to have a guess at mine, and I don't like to think at a bit, open session like this, that I haven't got any weaknesses at all, but I can assure you I have. And one of the weaknesses is really kind of, just wanting to get involved and getting right into the detail, that micromanagement side of things. If I've got a choice, I'll let someone else do that. My passion's more to do with strategy, business development, really leaping forward rather than just walking forward, if you like.
Right.
Yeah.
Nice. Thank you. We can continue.
Okay.
Okay. Hi, Peter. Let me just try and switch on my camera. I'm still in my pajamas, but
oh, that's okay. We don't want too much information here.
Yeah. So, your first company, you said you started when you became an entrepreneur. You started your first company, and it was $1 billion company. Then, soon after it became $1 billion company, you quickly moved out of that company and went into Burkina Faso to start a company. You look at Burkina Faso, the country is complex. There are so many challenges. It has been subject to so many coups. What was your key driver to move into such an environment? I'm personally running a startup in here in Zimbabwe. It's not easy, but some of the problems that we have read on Burkina Faso, for example, Zimbabwe is probably in no way close to that. So what key partnerships were you looking at? What was the major driver of going to, you've just made your fortune. Why? I know there are issues of passion, but why get into Burkina Faso?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and I guess I had to answer that question many times because when you get to make a company as like I did, or I was a co-founder of that, so there wasn't just myself doing it. It's not at all normal, if you like, to just say, well, I'm now going to take on something incredibly tough. and like you say, I mean, it's incredibly tough by African standards. When I basically first went in there, and this is kind of the heart of the matter, if you like, I certainly made a lot of good friends in Burkina, very close friends in Burkina. And they, so there was the allure of actually going back and working with some very close friends there. That was one thing. Second thing was that I was appalled by the poverty in the country, and just the lack of natural resources that they could actually grow an economy on. And so they were very, very dependent on aid, and they were very, very dependent on France. And I didn't think any of those were really particularly good. And I thought there was a chance that we could make a hell of a difference there if we challenged some of the paradigms that existed. And these are geoscientific paradigms. And very briefly, one of the paradigms was that there was actually not any large-scale gold deposits in Burkina Faso. And I don't want to kind of go into too much detail. It's sort of irrelevant for this discussion, I think. But the whole history of the country is that they never really found a lot of gold. They found a lot of small gold deposits, but the wisdom, if I could quite call it that, was that that's all the country had. The scientific evidence for that was absolutely appalling and didn't support that at all. And so we thought, myself and two Burkinabe geologists thought that it was more likely that there were going to be some large deposits, gold deposits there in Burkina, and we were going to have a go at trying to discover them. And if we did discover them, then we stood to be able to make not only a lot of money for ourselves, but also create a lot of employment for the people in Burkina Faso and potentially even change their economy. And there's not many countries really that you can go into that you can change the economy of the country, reasonably quickly, say in 10 years. That's tough. And anyhow, so we thought that there was a chance in Burkina. The friends that I had, who were very knowledgeable people, had huge networks in Burkina. They I guess convinced me. My sense of philanthropy opened me up to going into that country, and that's what we did. And we were absolutely fantastically successful, and we were supported by the government to an incredible degree. And I can honestly say that some of the things that do bother people in Africa, like corruption, just there was only one situation where I ever got put into a room, and in a situation where there was a serious discussion about corruption, and after about 4 or 5 hours, the issue just dissipated and never came up again in my subsequent 20 years in that country. So it's a hard country. It's very, very difficult, and it's got more difficult, unfortunately, with some of the coups that are going on there, and the so-called liberation of Libya, which freed up a whole lot of unemployed mercenaries and so forth. And it's been a terrible sort of the last 5 years there in the country. It's been really terrible, sad to see. But it's not as difficult as what it seems, especially if you've got people that are very well intentioned people, that are very well principled people that are working with you. If I didn't have that, I wouldn't have went into that country almost unequivocally. So having the right people there, the right sort of opportunity, the opportunity not only to change the economy of the country, but also provide employment and hope for a lot of people that didn't have hope before. I think that was kind of what got me into Burkina. That you could say, well, you could have went to easier countries, and yeah, well, that's true, but that's what I knew, and that's what kind of worked at the time.
So having gone through the notes of the meeting, I think your explanation actually resonates more with the business canvas illustration, because I see one of the key points there you raise is that you had partnerships already in the country. You had some key people that you trusted. Then we were also aware of the key activities in the country, that there is gold mining in there that could be used to turn the fortunes of the country. You also talk about the key resources, the expertise that you had, that the people appealed to for this to happen, and of course the value proposition that you were able to turn the turning around of the fortunes of the country, employment creation, etc. And I think that value proposition brought a lot of stakeholders around the table as well, to be able to see what you are bringing to the table. So yeah, I can see how this then resonates with the canvas that you're talking about, but also on a broader picture. If we are bringing value to the table, no matter the environment, I guess we get the buy-in from various stakeholders. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem. I think your observations are pretty good, and the analogy you make with the business model canvas is really kind of it's very good. One of the things that the business model canvas does miss out on is really that the social benefit. They kind of talk about costs, and they talk about revenue, and you work out profit and so forth. And this is all very good, and there's no question you've got to kind of be very cognizant of that. But the social benefit, that was a huge driver for me to go there. If it was just after revenue or profit, you can get that in a lot of different places, and Burkina would not have been the best place for me to go. So that's a bit of a shortcoming of the business model canvas. The other thing that is really quite interesting is luck, and I'll just talk about that a little bit later. So we've talked a bit about emotion, so I don't really emotion and passion here, so I don't really need to say too much more about that. But I have also always been surprised how people don't have a very clear idea of what they're passionate about. And I'm not just talking about younger people, I'm talking also about older people. And it's I as a person who's got plenty of passion, I find it very interesting that people don't have passion about certain things. I find it very easy to work up passion and about different concepts, and some of them are things I shouldn't really get into, but it's a thing that I think it's because people maybe just don't spend the time trying to figure out what they're really passionate about. And there's not a systematic sort of procedure, and to a large degree there's not a systematic procedure, but there are sort of helps and guides as to discovering what your true passion is. So that's kind of one of the things that I would say to people: if you don't know what you're passionate about, spend a bit of time trying to figure out what it is, rather than just going and wandering around and just jumping on whatever car's going past. And it's not a good way to live your life. To figure out what you're passionate about, spend a bit of time, trying to define that, and then once you define that, then develop your ideas and your business ideas and go from there. And one of the quotes that come out, and there's various quotes about it, but this is not a bad and very succinct quote from Steve Jobs. The only way to do great work is to really love what you do. In other words, be passionate about what you do, and then you've got a hell of a chance of being able to do something quite significant, quite great, if you like. But if you don't love it, it's hard. I think you'll you stand, at least in the parlance of startups, you stand as having a very high probability of failure. So what comes out of passion? It's things that I've touched on: unwavering commitment, innovation. You keep persisting. If you try something, it doesn't work, you try something else, it doesn't work, you take something from some other industry and you bring it back and put it into your problem, and you find an innovative solution. You persist with trying to find solutions. Resilience, you can take a hit and get up and keep going. Inspiration, certainly touched on that, some of the things that really inspire you. And quality as well. I think the quality really comes out of the passion. At least it does for me, because I'm sitting there thinking about it, and I know to succeed that you just don't have to have the idea, but you've got to be able to really hone that idea so it becomes not just another idea. It becomes a really top quality, compelling idea, and that translates into the business. So that's the sort of things that come out of passion. Luck is kind of a really interesting conversation, and it's a conversation that I got involved in when I was back in the corporate life, and a guy that was particularly a very strong mentor for me got up and gave a talk on luck, and it was a very interesting sort of talk, one that we completely we didn't know that he was going to talk about that, but it did make us think about the whole concept of luck. What is luck? Do you have, are there lucky people? Are there unlucky people? Can you create luck? And if you can create luck, how do you create luck? And then you go back one and you say, well, what is luck anyhow? And anyhow, I suffice to say that I believe that there are lucky people. I also believe that that these lucky people have very common traits. And if you look at those traits and understand those traits, then and you adopt those traits as part of what you do and how you go about your life and your business, I think that you can, in fact, map out to become a lucky person. And when you got luck on your side, it's not a bad thing to have. So there's a lot you can read about it and a lot I can talk about it. I could probably talk non-stop for a couple of days about luck, and people can say that I'm lucky, and you say, well, really? Maybe there's a little bit more than luck involved. Maybe luck's not involved at all. To be as successful as what I have been, I think I would not have been that successful if I wasn't lucky. So I'll just leave it at that. I'll let you just have a look at some of the notes there about about luck, and if you want, I can refer you to some books, and we can talk more about the importance of luck, and how you get luck into your life and how you become a lucky person. But I certainly believe that people can transform their lives into being lucky, and no matter where you are. And I'll probably come back and give you an example of that a little bit later on. So no takers on arguing about that. That's good. I'll go to the business model canvas.
I was going to say, I feel lucky, being part of this meeting this morning to discuss, about this. And I was also about to say that I think there are many ways people look at this, perspective around luck. Some call it, a blessing. Some, also I've, heard people discuss things like leadership. Are you a born leader, or you become, a leader with some traits, which you can build in. So I think this is a very interesting, conversation. But when I look at the slide, Peter, in terms of the traits, I think there's a scientific way of actually, looking at it to say there is a certain way of engagement, a certain way of, seeing the big picture, a certain way of empowering, a certain way of building these connections, and then having luck, as an outcome. So yeah, I don't want to argue, but I certainly subscribe, to the perspective. Thanks, Peter.
No problem. Nobody else want to say anything about luck? Okay, so I'll just keep going then. So the business model canvas that you're going to see in front of you is really...
yes, Peter?
Sorry?
Hello, yes. So as you were just asking if anyone wants to say anything about luck, no, I think it's the 48 laws of power, where one of the laws says avoid the unlucky. So even when you are trying to do your set up your business, I think at times, given the hurdles that you are going to face already by setting up your business, You may also not want the misfortunes, or in quotes, the burden of carrying or interacting with the unluck, in quotes, if that is it, or a concept. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Well, I'll just keep going on. I'm just a little bit cognizant of the time. So the business model canvas is a single page. It can be put onto a single page. That's one of its great virtues. It's simple, single page. It can get you thinking in the right way about a business, not all the way, not all the dimensions of the business, but certainly some of the more important aspects of a business. So that's the business model canvas. It's easy to change. It's easy to envisage what's really going on, what's really important about a business, etc. The business plan, that's a lot more detail, and that's further down the track. So most of my kind of work is really with the business model canvas, with that idea creation, mapping out into a business model canvas, and then start to touch on the business plan, and sometimes we even just go straight through that and into a fully blown company without much of a plan. I shouldn't say it, but sometimes things have happened so quickly that the plan's been made almost on the run. And you know, that company that went from being worth 2 cups of cappuccino to $1 billion in about 3 years was a case like that. It was moving so quick that as fast as what we'd ever try to draw up a business plan, as soon as we got to page 40 or whatever it was, we actually had to change it again. So it just almost got to the stage of being pointless. It was a plan that was made on the run, and most of the business plans and business model canvases are in fact dynamic. They're live documents. The company is alive. It's interacting with the market. You know, the world's changing. The externalities are changing. So it's not a case of actually saying, yeah, I'm not going to do anything until I got a business plan and stuff like that. And so you see the banks in particular. I don't want to pick on those guys too much, but they're saying, you know, where's your business plan? Well, sometimes in this sort of really dynamic sort of startup phase of a business, you just don't have that time to put a plan together. And like I say, as soon as you put a plan together, it's out of date. So it's interesting. It's something that some people do and some banks insist on, but I've certainly been in businesses that have never really signed off on a plan, and in a formal sense. The business plan is really like it's virtually on a PowerPoint, if you like, and in Excel spreadsheets. It's not on a U-Boot bound document that sits on a shelf. That's the worst thing you could have for a startup business. It's just it doesn't make too much sense to me. So I'm mostly working in the business model canvas sort of area, things that are in a really dynamic phase of business startup. A lot of uncertainty, a lot of changes going on. Not only just changes within a company, but changes external to the company that impact on the company. So that's my interest in the business model canvas. The elements of the canvas are quite a few, and you can just follow these different elements out, and you can map them out, and you can do it in a sort of question space. And there's a whole series of questions that you can just go through, and rather than read those out to you, I'll let you read through those. But the first question is, and it's a very fundamental question, is what is your value proposition? So that's where you come from the idea. So, and the idea is something that you're particularly passionate about. It's in an area you probably know something about, in the sense of actually knowing what the market is, or what the segment of market is that you're going to push this product or service out into. So it's like you're going onto your home ground, and if you follow your passion, you end up sort of on your home ground, something that you know a lot about, and that enhances your probabilities of success. So it's that value proposition that is the key thing. You build everything around that. People can come up with some academic sorts of definitions what a value proposition is, and And so various people say, oh, 1988, McKinsey wrote a definition, and you can read that out what it is. It's a clear, simple statement of the benefits, both tangible and intangible, the company will provide, along with the approximate price it will charge each customer segment for those benefits. And that's great, lots of words. When you start to examine what this value proposition actually is, what it does, it tells the customer the number one reason why a service product is best suited for a particular customer segment within which that customer is part of. So it's the number one reason. It's a compelling reason. Why does the customer have to have that product and service that you are offering? How's it going to change their life? How's it going to make their life easier? How is it going to add value to their business? How is their business going to be able to make more products and services that they in turn sell? These are the sorts of questions that are at the heart of what a value proposition is. A successful value proposition, it's got to be very clear, it's got to be concise, it's got to be compelling, very persuasive, and it's got to be able to turn a potential customer into a paying customer. That's the value proposition. We'll see some of these, and one of the ones that always sort of amused me, and it's maybe because I travel so much, is the value proposition that was put out by Uber, and I'll touch on that again, because one of the banes of my life was actually dealing with taxis, and you know, some of the most unsavory experiences I've actually had as a traveller has been in taxis, and to see what Uber came up with their value proposition, it was really it just made me smile, and I'm a complete convert to using Uber. A value proposition should be communicated to customers directly via websites, marketing, etc. But the more direct, my belief is, the more direct that you can communicate to the customers, again, the better chance that you've got of being able to be successful in your business. Because in the end of the day, and especially as a startup, I don't know that anyone could quite articulate and communicate with a degree of enthusiasm, given that I've got an intense passion about this idea, better than what I can do. And that was something that I realised way back in time, before I became an entrepreneur, when I was really starting to ramp up as an entrepreneur in the company that I first started with, a very large company, that I needed to do. I needed to be able to explain my ideas very, very clearly, in a very compelling, very passionate way, so that I could get funding to pursue those ideas within the company. And I couldn't just leave it up to someone else to try to do justice to my ideas. So I found that a lot of the ideas that I had initially, way back when I was in my 20s, they were getting defeated because not that they were not good ideas, it's just that they weren't communicated properly. So I can sit there and I can complain about it, and certainly I did that for a while, but then I realized, well, what's good at complaining? It's never really going to get me anywhere. I've got to be the one who communicates my ideas directly to, my customers as they were in that large company. So I learned that communication, so that I could actually be very clear in the communication, whether I had 5 minutes to do it, 2 minutes to do it, 10 minutes or a day to do that communication, whatever it was, and to whoever was that in that customer segment, I actually had the right language and the right means to actually reach out and connect with them and communicate to them in a very clear and concise way. So, I could do that through the concept of the value proposition. And if you go back and say, well, I want to be able to have a value proposition that I can read out in one sentence, well, maybe that's sometimes all you get to talk to customers, to talk to investors. You get one sentence. You might think, well, that's ridiculous. I never heard of that. Well, I can tell you, I've been in rooms where I've walked in and you've got a number of different investors there. And I think, I've had 30 seconds to get them on the hook, to get them listening, because if I don't get them listening in that 30 seconds, there's a very good chance that they're going to be thinking back, their mind will wander back to who they saw half an hour ago, or who they're going to see in the next hour, or what they're going to do at night time, what they're going to eat for dinner, all this kind of thing. So I kind of, like to have the very, very concise one sentence value proposition, and then have that backed up by, various longer narratives that I can then spin around that value proposition again in a very clear and concise manner. That's something that is absolutely fundamental to being successful as far as I'm concerned. So when you're looking at sorry,
Peter.
Yeah.
I just want to bring in probably controversial points around the value proposition. And I would want to hear even, Tawanda, Gamu, Faith, thoughts on this. Like, I see, that Peter and Sons are really doing well. They are selling their chicken. They do really a very good, menu, or a very good product. But they are working, say, in just Harare, the capital city in Zimbabwe, or just in the capital city of that country only. They even taken their brand outside, in like Harare, or that capital city. So if I went to another town and said, I want to, do exactly, like what Peter and Sons are doing, the chicken, that menu, I also have the skill set. Would that, pass, and forgive the legal, maybe consequences around that issue, but would that pass as value proposition? Imitating, another brand, in another area, like would that pass as, a value proposition?
Yeah. So, sorry, Admiral, just to say what that value proposition is.
Yeah.
If
So
you're asking me.
So I'm imitating a brand, say KFC, McDonald's. They do, a very nice, maybe fast food, or I'm not promoting fast foods, right? But I'm saying they are working in a limited area, say in a region. And I want to exactly, offer the same under my own brand, but I'm asking if that, passes as value proposition.
Okay. Do you want me to answer that, or Gigi, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I'm open to hearing, thoughts from, our colleagues on this call. But if there's no takers, you can answer, Peter.
Okay.
So, well,
Okay.
I would assume that the originator of the idea would have seen that or realized that it's a value proposition in Harare. But what I would not know is if there are similar circumstances in the market that you are also trying to go and replicate this idea. So I think a lot will go into it in terms of maybe what are the barriers to entry, how high are the barriers to entry in the other market that you're trying to get into. But I think it's controversially, as you call it, it may still be a value proposition for the other area if you are going to deliver the same kind of utility that is being delivered in the area where this product was initially delivered, or this product or service. And I think like this because I think this is how the franchise model is worked, I think, around the world, whereby picking from what you give as an example, KFC, for example. KFC started not in Africa, but what they have done is they have replicated, or they franchised the same idea into different parts of the world, trying to bring about the same kind of utility that has been delivered elsewhere. This is how I see it. Thank you.
No, thanks, Tawanda. Yeah, and yeah, I think the franchise part really answers to say, so it's value proposition, but then now taking care of the legal aspects around imitating, then you become a franchise. Because I was feeling like if someone is solving a problem in Harare, that's innovation, that's value proposition. They are not solving the problem in Mutare or in another area, and I want to do that. So I felt like it was value proposition, but the legal aspects of it, and then the franchise, and that you bring in, I think I understand that it could, so it is some kind of value proposition, but you are imitating in a legal way, and so you get the franchise, and then you get to offer the service. Yeah, thanks, Tawand.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I could sort of answer that two different ways. One is if I was going to be a seller of chickens and try and compete with McDonald's, I would actually go to the customer base and start to really probe the customer base as to what did they really want from their eating experience. Was it something that's just a chicken, or did they want a healthy chicken? Did they want to have it with a particular taste? Did they want to have it with say an African sauce rather than the U-Butte American sauce? So there's a local kind of taste. Did they want to be buying from an African person rather than from a offshore global corporation? I just want to kind of feel out what the customer really wanted from their experience, and what they would, how you might be able to perhaps not quite the right politically correct words, but get into their mind about their eating experience and expand their mind to consider other dimensions that might be to your favor, right? If you follow what I'm saying there.
Okay. Yeah.
If I turn it around and just try and answer it in a different way, a friend of mine in Burkina that was one of my partners when we went in there and did the gold exploration, when he made enough money that he could afford to have a house in Canada, he, of all the things he got obsessed about, and he's one of those sort of people that loves to and is very, very capable with using his hands and his mind together more than most, he got obsessed by ice creams. And he wanted to make ice cream, wanted to learn how to make ice creams, and he certainly did. And he put a lot of time and effort into learning, to teaching himself and going to classes on how to make ice cream. And he went and did it over a couple of years until he had it down pat that he could actually make an ice cream that was a healthy ice cream, that didn't have this ingredient and that ingredient, which was deemed to be carcinogenic or whatever, or unhealthy to some people. So that was his first step. The second step was in the creation of what is probably the best ice cream shop in Ottawa, in Canada, the capital city. His second step was actually to start to create African flavored ice cream. So no one had actually done that. They've got 48 flavors of anything and everything, but nothing that is actually authentically African in flavor. And so he created not only a healthy ice cream, he created a healthy African flavored suite of ice creams. And those ice creams are really there. He has trouble keeping up. He just wants to have one shop. He doesn't need to make a lot of money. He's made that. He just enjoys making ice cream, and he enjoys the whole customer experience and seeing people really enjoy his ice creams. That's what gets him out of bed. Unfortunately, he has to get out of bed at 3 o'clock in the morning to make his ice creams and stuff like that. So, anyhow, that's kind of you're talking about chickens, I'm talking about ice cream. It's like getting a product, how do you get that product, how do you make it, you know, and you come back to that whole thing, you know, passion, and then, okay, so you got passion, then what do? You know, you've got the idea, then you've got to develop the idea so that it's competitive in the marketplace, and you want to make sure that it's healthy because everyone is trending towards eating healthily. So yep, get on that trend. But then how do you differentiate yourself? You have African flavors, and those flavors are actually really, really good. And so he's doing that in Africa, and my challenge to him is to go back into Burkina and start to sell his ice cream there, where you would actually have more of a market for ice creams than sitting in cold Canada. But anyhow, it's another story.
Thanks for sharing that example. Thanks.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so the components of a value proposition, the customer dimensions is needs, wants, and fear. They're the three operative elements, if you like, our operative dimensions. The one you've got to really get onto is the needs, something that a customer actually needs. They can't do without it. And if you can get into that space, then you're in a very, very good space. Wants, well, that's more on the emotional side than really something that you physiologically need or need for your life, etc. You know, like you don't really need any of the Microsoft products, for example. You can actually have none of those on your computer. You don't need Facebook. You might think you want it, but you actually don't need it. So there's a big difference between needing and wanting, and just how you operate and turn those dimensions or play those dimensions, think about those dimensions in terms of the value proposition that you're putting together. And of course, the other side is the side that we live with on a daily basis. If you ever listen to the mainstream media, and that's fear. So fear gets peddled and people react to fear. It sells newspapers, it gets people's attention straight away. And so fear is a dimension that can be or is in one way in or out of the customer dimension, but it's an important dimension of the value proposition. So that's a couple of the dimensions that you should consider when you're getting that value proposition right. There's the product service pool. What's the benefit? What are the features of your product, of your service? Is it low cost? And it shouldn't. You should never try and compete on costs, because that's a one-way street, and it's to the bottom. So you've got to have features. You've got to grow those features, whether you're doing software or hardware or a service. You've got to be thinking constantly about those features that people need, features that that just build on one another. So there's a pipeline of features coming through on the software side, say, and then the whole product experience. This is kind of an area that a lot of people don't sort of think about too much, but we have a company at the moment in Australia that the product experience is absolutely critical. So how we sell a product into the customer base, you know, just it's not a matter of just going up to for us, it's not a matter of just going up to a cashier and saying, yeah, I'll buy this. No, we're not doing it like that at all. So we've got to really sell that whole experience, make that experience really rewarding, happy experience, and an experience where people feel that they've actually delivered value, not just the value of what you're selling them, but you know, you've given them something that they can then take back into their company, and they can use that to demonstrate the value of, say, their employment as an employee in that company. So that whole kind of product experience, I'm just giving you one example there, but that is an incredibly important part of the value proposition and delivering on that value proposition. Because it's all very well to have a value proposition, but if you don't actually deliver on it, you've got a problem, and it'll come up quite quick. So that's the product service pool part of the dimension of the value proposition. I talked about Uber, which always, every time I travel, which is quite a lot, I'm sort of traveling like 5 or 6 months in a year, I just have to I will always have a run-in with taxis because the taxi driver is invariably they're on the take. They're trying to make as much money out of you as possible. Sometimes when you're booking a taxi, the person that you're ringing, the taxi you're making the booking through, really doesn't care. You've got a bad connection. They don't care about it. You don't know who the taxi driver is that's coming to pick you up. You don't even know whether the taxi driver is going to pick you up and all this kind of thing. Well, Uber came through, and it's really the value proposition that they deliver on and that they enunciated is really, really great. It's one tap on your app, and the car comes directly to you. You can have a look at the driver. You can see how that driver's rated, how that driver's reviewed. You can then abort the driver. You can share the ride with other people. The payment is actually made right up front, and that value, the value of the trip is up front. So you're not actually watching a meter and then being told this has to be added, that has to be added, and oh my goodness, sorry, I didn't tell you that we're in a traffic jam and whatever else is going on. So Uber gets around a lot of that, not all of it, but it in my experience, not only has a very clear value proposition that's very compelling to me, but delivers on that proposition 90% of the time. So I think that's one of the best value propositions. It's certainly in front of my face just about all the time that I'm traveling. Just as an example. This is just a couple of the companies that we started. On the left was the West African Gold Company, and our little kind of sentence was discovering gold faster, feet on the ground. So we were out there in Burkina Faso. That's my two colleagues. So there's three of us started that company. Loren, who's the man who I was mentioning about ice creams, he's on the left-hand side. So he went from being a geologist to being an ice cream entrepreneur. On the right-hand side is Maurice Francois Ouedraogo, and he's gone from being an active geologist through being successful in this company to doing what he's really passionate about. So his first passion was trying to change the economy of his country, which he did with us there. The second passion was actually to try to provide proper training for the people in his country. So we ended up building a bricks and mortar training institute in Ouagadougou, and he's been operating that for very successfully for over 10 years now, producing 75 master's students and I don't know how many undergraduates. But our value proposition was simply to the investors, we were going to discover gold faster with our feet on the ground, because we were going to get out there, we were going to be walking in the countryside looking for gold, not sitting in an office, not flying around on planes. We were going to be feet on the ground. So that was what got the investors to invest in a company in a country that they didn't even know typically existed. So the next one there was High Size, which was, so you can think of that as a Earth ultrasound equipment company, where we were actually doing the ultrasound surveying of the Earth. It was the first one in the world that actually focused on what they call hard rock mining and hard rock exploration. And our one-liner was high resolution three-dimensional geological and mine mapping. It's about time. And the way that you actually, the pun there is it's about time, and a lot of the science there, the fundamental part of the science is that it's a time-based science, and so that's the hook. On the next one, on the right-hand side, we're in Mali. It's a completely different group, and it's a much harder country than Burkina Faso, despite what the Malians say. And that's a group of us just sitting there confronting and talking with the village. You can't see the village. We had about 2,000 odd people coming through windows, roofs, and sitting out in front of us there. And the story behind that is that no one goes where no one knows. And it's a bit of a long story. If I try and get it through to you in one or two sentences, basically the Malian people knew of gold occurrences in their country that did not appear on any map. And these gold occurrences went back 700, 800 years ago. And because of my relationship with the person on my on the left of me in blue, he basically let me know about these gold occurrences. And I wasn't actually going there to look at gold. I was going to look at some of the historical iron mining and iron production, which was in a very secluded part of Mali, which not many white people have gone to and actually knew anything about. So if you don't know anything about it, you don't go there. And so very, very few people would go there. And it was genuinely hard to get into that area. But in that area, I could find the iron. I found very high quality iron, very high quality bauxite, and very high quality gold. And that was the start of the company in Mali. And those people are the business colleagues and friends that I've got in Mali. So you see in all these cases that there's never a case of me sitting there on my own. It's always a lot of different people there that have come together to share in that value proposition and trying to create value for their community, for themselves, etc. The next one is the lady on the left was really quite interesting, and she still works with me. She's from Burkina Faso, and one of the concepts about her was that she actually never knew the value that she could put on the table, if you like. And so very simply, she was virtually unemployed in Burkina Faso when she met up with myself. And she met up by myself by being at an art exhibition where she could do translation for me, so I could actually talk to one of the local artists who was exhibiting his art. And the interesting thing is that on talking to her, I found out that she could actually talk 10 languages in West Africa. The value to someone like me was that I was looking at one person who could translate 10 languages in West Africa, so any country in West Africa. So I only needed one translator, and I could talk for days on the value of that. She didn't know the value of that. I knew the value of that, and that started her career working for companies, people like myself and companies like myself. So she's eventually worked her way through, not only through Burkina Faso and all of West Africa, but now she's in the right-hand picture. She's in another company we started just in Perth about 4 or 5 years ago. You can see her very clearly there. And she is actually she is the first employee of that company. And she's a person, because of what she knows, how she does things, etc. In other words, the value she creates, and myself and the other co-founder, who's the third person from the back, on the left, from the left on the back. We knew what she was like, how dependable she was, how all the virtues that we needed she had. And so she came in as not quite a co-founder. She was the next one on into the company, and she's been there, and she's the backbone of that company now. So it's grown from being her being the only employee to having about 12 employees total now. And so she's had a very fundamental role in capturing and delivering on that value from her own personal sort of asset base. So it's, deriving these sort of value propositions, sometimes it requires you to understand what your assets are. And this is just a little bit of a side sort of diversion, if you like, where we just look at a lady who didn't think she had actually any assets at all, but in fact she did. Okay, so going on to what a business canvas model looks like, it's a very simple construct. You've got 9 different segments, and in the center part of this one page is the value proposition, which I've been talking about. And then you've got the different segments that feed into that value proposition. So just starting on the right, and probably the most important one is to know the customer segments that are going to feed into you're going to feed your product or your service that's your product, your value proposition into. The customer relationships, how do those relationships, how do they start? How are they sustained? How are they grown? So that's their customer relationship, number 6. Number 7 is really the channel. How do you get your products and services out to the different customer segments? And bear in mind, you might have several customer segments and you might have different products and services going out to each of the different customer segments. So you have to be a little bit mindful of that. And typically you just use the Canvas model just for each value proposition. But even so, you still might have several customer segments for one value proposition. The key activities that you need to do to deliver that product or service is another consideration, another dimension of this Canvas model. The key resources that you need: human resources, physical resources, monetary resources. What do you actually need to do those activities to deliver the products and services? Who are your key partners? And quite often people kind of, for some reason, don't really consider just who their partners are, which is one thing to think about. The other aspect of thinking about partners is what could they do to help you, right? So that company that I showed in the last slide, Portable PPB, that basically was created around a partnering system. And so to give you a little bit more information on that, and I can certainly talk about that later on offline or however you want, but we set up a fairly unique partnering scheme whereby we had 4 or 5 different levels of partners. These partners were very interested in the value proposition and particularly the product that we were going to produce. I'll correct the language there. We might be able to produce. We actually didn't have a product. We had an idea. We had some tests that the idea looked good and probably would work, but we weren't going to guarantee anything. But we could organize the partnering scheme, and as I said, 4 or 5 different levels, where the top level might put in $100,000 or $150,000 and the bottom level might put in $20,000. Basically, through operating and constructing that scheme, we raised over $750,000 that funded the development of not only the minimum viable product, which we could all see, and we could all see more results, and we could actually test that product in that, right around the world in about, I forget how many countries, let's just say 10 countries around the world. So it wasn't just testing the product in one country, it was testing in 10 countries. But all of that was basically financed by this partnering scheme. So it was really kind of a very, very fundamental aspect of the success of this company. And it's now, it's around about a $12-15 million business. It is in, I think 43 countries now, and that company looks like it may well win a state innovation prize in about 3 weeks' time in Australia. So anyhow, they go back, the key partners, who are they? What can they contribute? Do they just contribute money? Do they contribute their brand? They help brand your product and your service because they are branded themselves. So if they're backing you, then you've got to be pretty good. And so if you go back into that company, we had actually the 4 major gold companies in the world as key partners in funding the product that we were trying to deliver on. So you've got to also work out what your cost structure is in delivering your product and your service, obviously, and then how much money do you make out of the product and service, and of course your revenue's got to be much bigger than than your cost. Otherwise you'll go bankrupt. This is just an example of a business model canvas, and it's just a draft example. that have drawn up the Vaka Health Foundation. I haven't really populated it fully, but just gone through to give you an idea of how we're thinking about our business. It's certainly not complete, and it is really just a draft, and it's a draft to illustrate the point. But our value proposition is the affordable mobile and online training and education for nurses and midwives using local sensitive content and technology. So that's our sentence that explains that value proposition. The customer segments are nurses who are students, nurses who are experienced, universities, nursing clinics, hospitals, retiring nurses, retiring midwives, etc. How we do it, the channels, we do it mostly by mobile phone. We can do it by internet, web, internet and Moodle, and through workshops. So that's how we deliver the products and services that we've got in the value proposition. The key activities are designing a common curriculum, which actually went across the different countries there. So prior to, I think this is right, Admiral might correct me, but prior to VACA, we had different curricula for the one type of nurse. So if it was a critical care nurse, you might have a different curricula in Tanzania versus Kenya, etc. So there was one of the activities was try and design and get adopted a common curriculum, develop the content for that curriculum.
That's correct, Peter.
Okay, thank you. And develop a secure website, secure delivery mechanisms and so forth. Our key resources was getting a key developer, the content, the open source software, the aligned content providers, and really some experienced personnel to help in the delivery of the of our training and our services. Key partners, La Trobe University, which is where Yangama is situated. So we're actually classified as being a spin out from La Trobe University. Rotary has helped us. Some mining companies have helped us. Nursing colleges have helped us. Hospitals are helping us, and universities, etc. The cost structure, well, we have a minimal office at the moment, or that's going to expand quite rapidly. We had shared staff and facilities, mobile phones, etc. And the revenue stream came from course fees, workshop fees, grants, and donations, etc. So that's in a 5 minutes or less, a bit of a look at a business model canvas for Vaka Health. So I can take any questions on that if you like.
No, I think yeah.
Or comments?
Yeah, I obviously identify with the things that are on that business canvas model. So I would like to let others ask questions if yeah, there are some if they are in. But I think this is a really interesting way of looking at business. And I'm just thinking as we are talking that we need to do one with Faith on the virtual hospital. And it can really help us understand how we actually want to implement the virtual hospital, Peter.
Sure, absolutely. Okay. This is another attempt at making a business canvas model. It's called the Lean Business Planning Canvas. It's got a bit of a different flavor to it. The different flavor to it is that it kind of comes in from a problem area. So you look at the top left and you see that they're, in this particular case, asking for the top 3 problems that are affecting your customer segment that you want to develop ideas or that you've got ideas for. You look at what the alternatives are to solving those problems. Number 2, you look at solutions that you can provide that you thought through your ideation. You look at activities, how you're going to measure some of the benefits, some of the value that you are producing from your solutions to the problems. You try to work out the what is the unique value proposition, or even whether you've got a unique value proposition for the solutions that you're thinking about. If you haven't got a unique value proposition, you've possibly got a problem, and you actually have to try and counter that in a different way. And you just work through what some people call a moat or unfair advantage. That is, what can you do that can't be easily copied or bought? Sometimes there is something there that is just very, very difficult to to copy or imitate. Sometimes not. Channels, I talked about that. And the other part that's actually quite interesting is that when you develop a product or a service, you've got to create a very active and interested and engaged customer group, and that you do this through typically early adopters. So identifying who these early adopters are, reaching out to these early adopters, and today you might use words also like social influencers. These, if you can get a social influencer who's in that customer segment and influences that customer segment as an early adopter, then this is a tremendous way forward. As well as having companies that are large companies that are taking your solution, so that you can say, wow, our solution is so good, it's taken up by this this very large company or this very large hospital. We're embedded in that hospital or that company now, so you better get on board. They're on board, etc. So trying to figure out who those early adopters are is actually another dimension that is really kind of it's very important in developing a business and getting that business to take off. And so that's another it's another canvas, and I'd have to be honest and say that I actually work on both canvases, and that this particular talk, I won't talk about this one too much, but I think you understand the essence of what I'm saying here. So that's what the business canvas model looks like, as a bit of a cartoon. I've been through that. And basically for each of the different dimensions in the or segments in the business canvas model, there are sections, there are just specific questions that you've got to work through, and really you should be very diligent on this, because they're actually very well designed sort of questions. And so if you look at the value proposition, and I certainly won't go through all these questions right now, but I'd encourage you to do that, especially in developing your own business canvas model. Why do your customers come to you? What sort of promises can you make and do you make to the customers? What problems do our customers have, and how are they solving them? What's your competitive advantage? So this is a little bit like what was in the other the lean canvas model. How does our product or service meet the needs of the customers? And indeed, you sort of in some of the stuff that we do, we've got to try and we're not just throwing the products over the fence. So we're not just going through the cashier. We're actually making sure those products and those services are really embedded in the customer's workflow. And if they're not, then it's a problem. It's an issue. And so this is kind of like what they call onboarding. And that onboarding consideration comes into the design of the products and services, and is part of that value proposition. How are we going to onboard our product and our service into our customers? What do we offer that is unique? Why will our customers prefer our solutions to any of the alternatives that are there now? And what is the minimum viable product that I can to convince the customers and get customer feedback that what we see as a minimum viable product, they actually see and can sign off as being a minimum needed product. Okay. So they're the questions that you just step through those, and like I say, I won't go through all of that. I think it's pretty straightforward, and if people need help, then certainly I can give them some help in trying to find the answers to all of these different questions. Go through the resources, channels, cost structures, revenue streams. And the bottom line is that, at least in a financial sense, the profit, you have to make it, and your revenue's got to be more than your total expenses, with the emphasis on total expenses. So the disadvantages of the business model canvas, it's very, very simple. That's its advantage, and it's also its disadvantage. So you actually have to be cognizant that there are a few shortcuts that are built in. I touched on those with the lean business canvas model. It's good to actually refer to that and even work through that as being a second canvas model. There's no harm in having a couple of different canvas models for a great idea. But on its own, it is actually quite simple, but that simplicity is a huge advantage because it allows you to conceive of the totality of the business, or near totality of the business. It allows you to change things. It allows you to appreciate where there are shortcomings, where shortcuts can be taken, where shortcuts can't be taken, etc. It underplays the competition and the competitive advantage that you might be seeking or you might have. So it tends to not get that feedback from the market forces. But in the end of the day, once you start to develop that minimum viable product, that really gives you the state of play in the market and what the market thinks of you, and that's the importance of the minimum viable product. It also tends to underplay a little bit the importance of value creation. Not totally, but there's a lot of different dimensions that I've touched on before about value creation that are really quite important, that sometimes are difficult to capture in that business canvas model. But it's a simple one-pager. It communicates not only to you, but it communicates importantly to other stakeholders and to investors exactly what your business is about and how. And all of these questions, basically, if you're talking to sophisticated investors, they're going to want to know answers. They're going to be asking basically a lot of those questions that are that are posed in the preceding couple of slides. So you really should be having those questions answered yourself, because sooner or later you're going to hit investors as your company grows that are going to be asking and wanting and demanding answers to them, and you do not want to be there having to look silly saying, well, I just didn't think about that, because generally that can be a fairly fatal mistake in terms of getting building investor confidence and getting money from investors. So I'll just move and say, well, there is another dimension to running businesses. It's not just about making revenue. There's a lot more about that. And so you see in a lot of companies, they talk about basic goals, they talk about marketing and sales tactics, and so how we get our products out and we get as many customers as we can and keep our costs down and our revenues up and we make huge profits. And that's kind of what they think about and that's what they map out. But there is a lot more than that. And so typically you really look at the wider sort of value proposition. So we talked about a minimum viable product and we talked about a value proposition. When you start to get a company and it starts to grow, you've got to think about a whole lot of different things that create sustainable value in the company. And it turns out that if you're really thinking through these different dimensions of the value creation business for your company, that the revenues basically and the profit will tend to look after itself. But the focus is not the profit per se, it's actually the value that you're delivering to the stakeholders, to the investors, to the customers. And this is sort of a subject that I can talk to for a long time, but you kind of think in terms of your assets. So as a person who's running a company, and I'm involved with several, you think of your asset base. What are your assets? And it sort of comes back to the young lady there that I was mentioning before. What are her assets? She didn't know what her assets were. But to me, they were just outstanding, that she could actually talk in 10 languages, and I could communicate through one person over whatever it is, 10 countries or something like that in West Africa. I didn't have to bother with having several different translators who I didn't know that well and stuff like that. So it's kind of, you know, this question of what is the assets, or what are the assets that you want to grow in your company. That's the kind of consideration you've got to start to consider. And obviously there's just a huge asset sort of map that you should have in your mind, and you can see that in the bottom right. Obviously your assets are cash, your assets are customers, your assets are your network of customers, your inventory, your partnerships. All of these things are different assets that really demand, if you really want to grow a robust and sustainable company, you've got to be kind of thinking of all these different sorts of dimensions of your business and how you grow these different assets, so that the total asset base of the company is actually a lot more than just profit, because invariably that's what it is. A company is a lot more than the profit it makes in a year, the value of it. How much more? It's really a question of what the assets are in the company beyond the profit. One of the other really very important things is systems and building systems in a company. I won't talk about that too much because it's kind of outside of what we're talking about, but it is really, really important. And I guess the thing here is that one of the things that VACA is very cognizant of is wanting to build ecosystems for entrepreneurs throughout Eastern, Central and South Africa. So we're really trying to build these ecosystems so that entrepreneurs can get up, get their ideas out, get their companies organised, get governance organised, right up to top standard, to get their ideas articulated, presented as a proper pitch deck, so that they can actually raise money and have connectivity to the money lenders, if you like, or the investors. We're trying to set that ecosystem up throughout Eastern, Central and South Africa. So that's the systems part of the VACA, which I was talking about before, in the business value model. And then the other one, and there's many of these you can go on about, is just measuring just how well you're doing, whether you're making short-term measurements, long-term measurements, or you're just doing the financial measurements. And the other measurement you can do is a social measurement. What's the social impact of your business being? And that's more and more important. And really for VACA, it's extremely important. We want to know, for example, just how many students are we reaching out to? How many students in Zimbabwe? How many students in other countries? And what are they doing? How many courses they're doing, etc. So there's a lot of different metrics that you have to try and monitor the progress or not of your business. So the conclusion is that value creation is a very, very fundamental idea, and it's part of the birth, the development, and the strategy, continuing strategy of a company. A business should never, ever, ever take its eye off of how it creates value, and it's always got to be looking for new ways to create value for its customers, so it can grow its pipeline of products and services and grow its customer base. Creating value is just so fundamental. Being able to continually iterate around and change the way that you put out products and services, and change the way that you interact with the marketplace and the customers is also extremely important. You do that initially through the minimum viable product, but the minimum viable product is not typically something that you just do one-off. If you're lucky, yes, that's great, but quite often it might take 2 or 3 iterations to do it. And you've just got to be prepared to do it. If it fails the first time, don't be too worried about it. It's a great learning opportunity. Learn, move on, iterate, innovate, and do it again. Prepare thoroughly is really fundamental. You've got to go through kind of these through a mentoring, I think, through a doing, but also through a knowledge base. And the knowledge base is far better than when I started in entrepreneurship. We actually had just about a zero knowledge base of entrepreneurship as is currently known. We knew how to make business and we knew certain things about businesses, but we had to learn on the fly. It's problematical when you do that. We were very lucky. Word again. So you've got to prepare very thoroughly, but for goodness sake, don't procrastinate and put it off forever. And really, fundamentally, the other thing that we're trying to do with VACA, and if people should be doing this individually themselves, if they're not, is developing high quality professional relationships and networks as early as possible, because all of the stuff that I've been able to do in creating 40 odd companies has really been the result of these high quality, and I should put the word in, long-term professional relationships. They've allowed me tremendous optionality. They've allowed also tremendous opportunity. And it's not just having a large network. It's a really having a really high quality network of aligned people with same values and same social sort of values, if you like, as well as being people interested in making money. So that's about all I've got to say at the moment. So that's really just an introduction to the business model canvas. And if you've got any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Yeah, Peter, thank you very much. I think I haven't seen the time. I mean, flying past, we're almost up to 2 hours, but I enjoyed, this session. I have attended, previous sessions, but still, I learned a lot this morning, obviously on CAT time zone. So I would like to ask, if there are any questions, and also Tawanda, of course we are, running a bit, out of time, but you yourself have set up the Bema Valley in Zimbabwe, and how does this presentation from Peter relate with your experiences, say within Bema Valley, to you as an entrepreneur, Tawanda?
Okay, thanks, Admo. Thanks, Peter, for the presentation. So I think just to quickly jump into setting up of Bema Valley, I think my story starts with the passion. I've always had a passion of working with young people, especially in what we call remote or underserved communities, because I basically have the belief that what sets people apart is their ability to get an opportunity. So some years back, I secured a piece of land in Manicaland. For Peter, that's in the eastern part of the country. And I thought that with this piece of land, apart from growing agricultural produce, I could also use the opportunity to develop young people. So I was working in corporate for a company working in construction, but my long-term vision was to commit myself to this for some time. So after about almost 10 years working in corporate, I then decided to go and focus on my startup, looking at agriculture, but looking at the opportunity that was presenting in itself in the market, whereby Zimbabweans are moving towards more healthier options for food. Whereby they are looking at the type of food they are eating. So I thought, no, let me get into a business where I'm able to provide this. So I looked at the source. Then I said, no, most of these kind of foods, which we decided to call naturals or natural products or natural foods, are coming from the small scale farmers, the rural areas. Then on spending time in the smallholder farmers, where I happen to be one of them, I realized that they also suffer from not getting access to markets, despite the fact that whatever they are producing is required by more the urban populace, which is moving towards healthier food options. So what would then happen, because they do not have ready access to markets, they get underpaid for whatever they are producing by those who know about the opportunity. So as a first step, I then said, okay, let me give access to markets for these individuals. And how do I do this? So I then set up a company called Bema Valley Group, which is basically looks into farmer capacitation. Smallholder farmer capacitation, looks into logistics, getting the produce to the market, looks into the marketing of the product. So I look at, for example, small grains, your finger millet, etc. That is really become a thing for those who are pursuing healthier eating options. I then look at getting those prepared by the smallholder farmers back in the villages, back in the smallholder farms. Then I rebrand them. I then package them and brand them to up to the standards that they are required by the market, mostly in the urban areas. Then I also looked at the protein options. Then I looked at what is the type of protein option that I can grow on my plot that is easy for me, since I still have to learn a lot in terms of farming. Then I considered goat meat. So I started rearing some goats of my own. I started off with 20, buying from the community. Then I then decided to improve the breed so that I could improve the quality of meat. But as a point of difference, I then decided to only feed my goat produce only on natural pastures and not using any kind of artificial feeding mechanisms. But I also realized that the market would be too big for me. So I also expanded to look into other sources, like in the south part of the country, in Matebele and south, a place called Gwanda, where some of the cross breeds that are coming out of my plot, I've started reaching out to farmers in Mat South so that I could also give them the male components to improve their breeds, so that I expand my source of goat meat. So now, 2 years down the line, I now supply to wholesalers. I supply to individuals. When I say wholesalers, I mean big retailers who supply to their chain of stores. I also do individual supply to individuals in and around Harare, with the hope that at some point we'll be able to raise enough funds to expand. So just relating to what we've been talking about this morning, I looked at our business and I said to myself, one of the key partners that we identified are farmers, stakeholders in terms of the veterinary services, the law enforcement, in terms of how we would move our livestock up and down. We also looked at the food processors as key partners, as well as the retailers that I've just been talking about. So key activities, of course, we've got production. Then we also have procurement of other small grain mills from other local farmers. And the other aspect that I did not mention initially was that we are also into the manufacturing and packaging of agricultural lime to bring about better outputs for farmers. And this basically comes from my experience working in corporate, where lime was one of the products that we were manufacturing. Then we also provide consultancy, and this is by basically empowering the government veterinary services employees to go and out into the field to work with other farmers who are particularly doing goat meat, so that we get the best quality of meat even whenever we reach out to other neighboring smallholder farmers to procure meat. Then, of course, the manufacturing and marketing of lime is also one of our activities. Then resources, key resources. We are looking at our expertise in agro support services. So I work very, very closely with other individuals who are into agricultural support, and my young brother also specialized in agriculture in university, and he has been a great help on this. Then we also look at the promotion of sustainable health as a value proposition, provision of sustainable health food systems, provision of comprehensive agro support services, the enhancement of soil health and crop yield through agricultural lime. Then we also connect farmers with stakeholders for effective growth. So the farmers don't really now need to come up to Harare for them to be connected to the market. We are playing that part and ensuring that we compensate them fairly. Then, of course, customer relationships play a key role, and we have this continuous engagement with food processors and retailers. Then, of course, on our channels, we have got direct sales to farmers for our lime, then food processors and retailers as well. So, and customer segments, we've done this, and I think I've talked about that. So I think basically when I look at the canvas, of course, there are still areas that we need to sharpen our business model. But this is how I see it today, Admo and Peter and the team, to say this is how we have basically structured, and this is how we have been able to continue the business running for the past 2+ years or so. So I think basically this has been my experience. If there are any areas that may need clarity, but from what I have learned today, this basically, once you understand it from a business model perspective, it really sees the day. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Tawanda. I think from your story there, I can actually go back to Peter's last slide, where he talks of, relationships, stakeholders, unique value offerings. And I could see, that you probably have a number of, business canvases, coming out of your story there. So I hope, one day, and not so far from now, we can actually invite you to, give a webinar around how you have, developed around how you developed Bema Valley, sorry, in terms of, a business, a canvas, approach, because I think your story can really help other, young people who are wanting, to set up their own startups and really make them, profitable, but really starting from the passion perspective, and then understanding the value that you are creating, the systems that you have created, the networks. So yeah, thanks, Tawanda, for sharing, those aspects. Faith, Audrey, Vimbai, any clarifications, comments, questions? Yes, Vimbai, you can go ahead.
There's no question or comments from my end. Thank you.
Okay. Audrey.
Hello, I don't really have any questions, but I just wanted to say thank you for the presentation. It was very enlightening, and I also managed to grasp a few core concepts about entrepreneurship. Thank you so much.
So can we look forward to a startup coming from your end, and probably something to do with child care, because I can hear a baby in the background.
Yes, yes. With the passion I'm feeling now, I can actually start working today.
Faith, we are working on the virtual hospital. And we have been talking about services that we are providing, booking, patient navigation, remote monitoring. For me, I think I'm leaving this meeting with a task to say I would want to put it on a, business canvas and see how really the, virtual hospital plays out. So do you have any comments, related to this, Faith?
Thank you, Dr. Jokio. I have no question then. The presentation is quite enlightening, and indeed, it gives more energy to continue putting on the work pertaining to the virtual hospitals. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Faith. Peter, I don't know if you have any, final comments regarding, the feedback and also regarding, the presentation. But we are going to be putting up this on our YouTube channel as Vaka Health Foundation, and this is going to be distributed to all our nursing channels, and whatever communities they interact with. But I think I would want us to follow up this with a series of maybe other webinars, bringing in various entrepreneurs from the nursing community, outside the nursing community, people working on, stuff related to health, and also which align with what Afaka is working on, and to use, the business canvas model and value proposition, as a model, because I think you shared, two key approaches. One that's the other one, which we used the VACA example, and then the other one, the problem solving. And like you said, they are interrelated. But I think in terms of our vision as VACA, identifying problems, coming up with sustainable ways of solving, I think those approaches really align with what we are looking at. So I don't know if you have any final comments, any last words, so that we can wrap up this morning's webinar. You're on mute, Peter.
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you.
there's no other comment, but yeah, it's just good to be able to share the experience, and if people want to go and talk some more about developing business canvas models, I'm available. Yeah.
Yeah, so we are going to put, our email address in the description for the video that we are putting up on YouTube, and that email is vakaafya at vakahealthfoundation.org. So if anyone watching, this presentation needs to get in touch with Vaka, that's the email that you can use. It will be in the description of the video on the channel. So look out for that email address, colleagues, anyone who is going to be watching, this video. And we are available, as Peter says. We want to walk this journey and impact 1.2 billion inhabitants in Africa, and that's a lot. We want to lift health outcomes. We can never be able to do this alone. We want to have entrepreneurs around each and every nurse and the communities they interact with. This is why we are building a virtual hospital, a hospital without walls. And we feel, with our other product, X Marketplace, where we are connecting people to service, we can be able to reach out to as many partners around the world, in Africa, outside Africa, the diaspora, to work and be able to, impact the 1.2 billion, inhabitants in Africa. And the bulk of them are below the age of 30. So we have a young population. We have a lot that we can do to improve, and even increase people's life expectancies. So thank you, everyone who was able to, come into this session for us to have an interactive session and get these, insights from Peter and everyone else who was on the call, Tawanda, Faith, Audrey, Wimbai, and Gigi. Thank you very much and have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much. Yep. Bye-bye now. Enjoy your day.
Thank you. Thank you, Pat.